welcome to Adobe Illustrator in Under 10, the tutorial series, where we discuss techniques in Adobe Illustrator in under 10 minutes. In this particular session, we're going to discuss the gradient tools in Adobe Illustrator. This is going to be quick. Again, if there's anything that you miss, please feel free to rewind the video, take a look again, and get familiar with the topic. Okay, so we have gradients that we may want to use in illustration and various things that we're using in Adobe Illustrator, and the way we would go about using a gradient is two ways. The first way is we have to actually set the gradient itself. Now let's take a basic shape and we're going to pick a rectangle just because it's simple. We're going to set it to default colors, black and white, and let's increase this so we can see it. Right now it has a white fill, black stroke, and let's just center it. Alright, so now that we have this, what we're going to do is we're going to select the object. If your window for your gradient is not already up, I already have mine up over here. If it is not up, we're going to go to Window, and we're going to go down to Gradient, and it will bring your gradient window up. Now, you can select in newer versions of Adobe Illustrator the stroke and actually set a gradient to that, but in previous versions, you would have to convert the stroke to a fill. If you're using a previous version, you are probably already familiar with this concept, and if not, just follow the instructions that you would utilize for changing it on a fill, and then you could do that with your stroke. Once you've expanded that, you go to Object, Expand, and then it will expand it, the fill and the stroke, and you can expand again to turn the strokes to a fill. Okay, so we're going to select the fill color of the white, and we're going to click linear, and this is going to give us a left to right or a top to bottom gradient, but it's going to go from one direction to the other, straight across. No curves, no nothing. So in this box we actually have the angle, which we can set the gradient, so we can change that, and as you notice in the box, it will change according to the direction and the angle that we give it. In addition to that, we can change the slider, so we can change where the positions of the colors are. We can also add color distances in between them, little swatches under the bottom. And we can actually change these by pulling them out. If we want to get rid of them, we can add more. We can rearrange them so they're in a different spot, and it will reflect in the object live. Okay, we can also click this button to reverse the gradient so that it's at the opposite direction of whatever it is that we had selected. So let's add an angle, and then let's switch that, and you notice it'll switch with the angle. And that's how you would do that for a linear gradient. Now for radial, it's going to be a little bit different. For the radial gradient, you still have an angle, but you'll notice nothing happens, at least when it's a perfect circle for the gradient. And we'll talk about how we change that. Right now it's a perfect circle because it's a radial gradient the way it starts, but right here we can change the aspect ratio. Let's decrease that, right? Then we can go to the angle, and as we change the angle, now you'll notice it changed because it's not a perfect circle. And let's increase it really wide. So we can go below and we can go above to change it depending upon the direction. So horizontal, vertical, and what we can do is we can reverse that color. Still the same thing. Now if you wanted to change the color of the actual swatches, you could select one, go up to your color picker, and let's change this to CMYK. You can change the color mode for any of the swatches themselves, and we could change that to a specific color, and now you'll notice it's reflected in the shape itself. If you wanted, you could also double click on the swatch, a smaller window will come up, same sliders, you could change them, and you'll notice they're changing up here too, and that color will actually be reflected. Let's change it to a bright cyan so we can see where it is. Okay, now the same thing would apply to a stroke in the newer versions of Adobe Illustrator, but with this, at least you get more options this time around. So let's go with linear, and you'll notice that the stroke has now changed, and I'm actually going to remove the fill so we can see this. So now we have the same colors that we were using before. I'm going to, let me remove the regular colors. Let's get a grayer look and bring that in. And we see the gradient goes across the stroke, left to right. Now there are three different types. So there's the gradient within the stroke, right? So that applies it across as if it was a fill, but keeping in mind that there is no actual fill. So it's almost like the fill is masked out. Then we have apply gradient along stroke. What this does is it applies the gradient along the outside border of the stroke, and it connects beginning to end. So if you have two different colors, let's say we make this a red. Okay, so now we have red. If I were to click this and change it, you'll notice that they meet in this corner. So it goes from black all the way around to red. Now, if I were to go to the last one, it's going to go across the stroke. So it's not going around, but across, up and down the stroke in its respective direction. So the inner part is going to be one color, the outer part is going to be another. All right, so let's click that, and you'll notice how it gradates from one color, the red, to the black. And again, you can switch these just like you did with any other one. It's the same concept. Now, if you wanted, you could switch it to radial, and you could do the same thing with these, except the only one that allows you to change the shape and size like you did with the fill is the apply gradient within stroke. And the reason why is because that one, like I said, is just like it's doing it to a fill, but the fill is masked out. So it's essentially the same thing. You still get the same properties that you would have gotten if you were doing it on a fill. So let's see. It's very subtle changes, but if you look, you can see those changes being made. Okay, now the last way to do this, and we're going to actually change this back to a fill and just show you this way, and the same thing could be applied to the stroke. So let me grab this color, change it to CMYK. I'm going to change that to a, let's give it a more purple look. And with this, we can actually hit the G key on our keyboard, or the gradient tool in our toolbar area, and then you'll notice we can expand or contract if we're using a radial gradient. We can actually change the slider live. We can still double click and get our slider and swatch information up. We can rotate this. Everything is still exactly the same, but we can do this live. It allows more flexibility on the actual object. And if it were linear, the same thing would apply, except now you could just go right to left. You can rotate and change the direction and the angle, and you can still double click. So that's how you would be able to manipulate gradients in Adobe Illustrator. It's very simple. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you're looking for another class and you want some more information on that, feel free to ask or request as well. You can find me online, www.theonewillfocus.com, or on Instagram, where the majority of my work is shown, at TheOneWillFocus, all spelled out, TheOneWillFocus. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next tutorial. Take care.